Hello, hi Estelle.
Hi, Judy. How are you?
Fine. I would like just to ask before we start if all the people can listen us. Just to be sure, I will see if someone can say to us that it's okay or not.
Hello, hello. Do you hear me okay, everybody?
Uh, I will look at. I don't have yet a message to say, and we will wait just 1 minute more
Okay. All right.
to see. For you, it's okay. You listen.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I hear you just fine. Yeah, yeah.
Lynn, can you say to us if you listen us, if it's okay for Estelle too?
Hello. Let me know if you can hear me okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I look at if I have a message.
Okay.
I'm waiting to know. Hello, hello. Green for blue 4 will start in few seconds. Ah, it's perfect. Lynn
All
said to
right.
her that she can handle. It's just you
Okay.
and me.
All right. That's good. Okay. Let's do this. All right. All right. So, where should we start? Shall we already tell the intro? Then, what are we talking about? Chocolate, sustainability, and all that. Shall I get started?
Yes. I don't
All
know why,
right.
but for me it's very difficult to have you, Estelle.
Okay.
Just I will look in. Maybe it's at my son. Maybe I don't. Can you talk?
Yes.
Sorry.
So your sound was low.
Yeah,
All right. So I'm glad you can hear me. All right. So,
it's better.
okay. Magic. Awesome. All
Thank you for
right.
your patience.
Sure. All right. All
So,
right. So, what?
Estelle,
Yes.
I'm very happy to have you this morning. I know you now for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
You are French like me, and you help a lot French people when we start to live in USA.
Mm-hmm.
And you are like the woman. I think you know all the French people we came because you help us to learn more about how we can look at for some food sometimes.
Yeah.
And but it's just for my part. It's why I know you. And you are a food writer,
Mm-hmm.
and you are a chocolate sommelier too.
Yes.
And you started your chocolate journey in June in 2050
Mm-hmm.
with a 37 chocolate challenge.
That's right.
Can you explain to us what is challenge?
So, yes. So, thank you, Judy, for this summary. I'm Mr. Tracy. So, originally, the I'm from France. I've lived in the US for the past 20 years. Right now, I'm based in the Philadelphia area. And to your point, I am the author of a food survival guide for French people living in the US. And my background is in chemistry, and like a lot of French people, I have always loved food. And what it is that happened in 2015 is I was really at crossroads. I was in a time of transition personally, professionally. And what happened is that I was inspired by a coworker of mine who ran 50K in honor of her 50th birthday to review 37 chocolate bars in honor of my 37th birthday. So this whole challenge that just was a personal challenge. I wanted to run a project with a beginning, a middle, and an end and feel accomplished just like my friend had when she had finished her run. I wanted to feel like I did it. I finished something in a time where I was really trying to build a lot of self esteem back. And I picked chocolate for a variety of reasons. Number one, something was nagging me when in the survivor guide. I could feel I could have done better with the chocolate chapter. it's not the most popular chapter, but for me it seemed really important. And a thing about chocolate is that at the time I had gone to a coffee shop, and I had seen all these chocolate bars with the name of a country. I'm gonna have like an example. Like here we have Ecuador, for instance,
Yeah.
right? And another one here where we have from this company, we have it says it's in small letters, but it says Ghana here, right? And this is different. This is from Mexico, but I kept wondering like what's the significance of that country of origin in terms of flavor? That was really my question. And I thought, well, if I do, inspired by my friend, if I eat 37 of this, I'm sure I'll find out. Well, what happened is that not only did I find some of this out, what I really realized over the course of the 5 months that the challenge lasted, my birthday is on Halloween. I reviewed the 37 chocolate bars in honor of my 37th birthday on Halloween. it I didn't expect to learn as much as I did. And also, what I realized is that for most people, I have a book upstairs about wine that says wine is a grocery, not a luxury. And I feel that chocolate is the opposite. Chocolate is a grocery and not right now, chocolate is a grocery, not a luxury. And it should be the other way around. Chocolate should be a luxury, not a grocery. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about. And what do I mean by that, right? So, what happened is I was shocked by the amount of knowledge I gathered over the course of this 5 months. And eventually, this prompted me to start my own business. So, what I really mean by chocolate sommelier is I try to condense what I've learned over the course of the 5 months and the past 8 years, truly. And I want people to experience this sense of wonder, of discovery that I have experienced over this chocolate journey. I want to be able to give them a little bit of that, knowing that chocolate, just like any food, tastes better when we do it together, when we taste it together. And we can talk more about that, but it's really, I want people to pause and put some consideration in the chocolate that they consume,
Yes.
um be, because that's not how it necessarily is right now. So that's the story. And the company is 37 chocolates.
Yes. I
Yes.
love this name. You know that I just learned about your history, but I always
Okay,
want to ask you why 37 chocolates.
now you
And now
know.
I know.
Hmm. Yeah.
And before to have you now, I try to understand the history of
Hmm.
chocolate,
Yes.
and it's very, very interesting.
Yes. All
And
right. So mhm.
I learn a lot of things, and I was surprised by one thing that they start to eat to drink chocolate with water and not with milk.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to go. Okay. So before I dive in, I want to encourage, this is a very large topic. I'm going to encourage all of you. I'm going to come with some book recommendation. If you really are interested specifically in this idea of fair trade, sustainability, understanding the large system, in English, this is the book I recommend. It's called Coco by Christy Leslie.
Okay.
All right. So this is a very, it's a very, you know, condensed, like there's a lot. It's dense. It's a dense book. It's fairly readable, and it's really for people who want to get to the bottom of this, right? In French, so my favorite book is actually this one, Petite histoire de la mondialisation à l'usage des amateurs de chocolat, Frédéric Amiel. This is probably my all-time favorite chocolate book, and I'll go explain why. And I'm going to refer to these two books. And later on, we're going to talk more about this book. But these are the two books that I feel, depending on your language, that explain some of the things of how we got there.
Okay.
So, chocolate is, wine has been consumed for 2,000 years, probably more. And chocolate as we know it, as a chocolate bar, is a very recent invention in the scale of history. It's what I think 250 years, something like that. It's 200. Like it's a product of the Industrial Revolution. And so when you think about beer, wine, whatever, it's very recent. So what we have to kind of like rewind is that where does chocolate come from? Chocolate comes from this. This is a cacao pod. This is a carving. It's a reproduction. It's a fruit. And that fruit grows 20 degrees north and south of the equator. When you think of the other countries that are known for chocolate, like Belgium and Switzerland, it's not a 20 degrees north and south of the equator. These are countries that manufacture the chocolate, but this product does not come from Europe. This comes from tropical climates, right? Today, Ivory Coast is the number one producer of cacao. Ghana is the second. But originally, this comes from Mesoamerica. And I find that in this book, the author does a phenomenal job of explaining like how Cortez, it all started with Hernan Cortez meeting Montezuma and discovering cacao. He discovers cacao for the first time. What happened is that then he takes cacao back to the Spanish court. So, and this is where how chocolate makes it to Europe. It's what's I have to do the math, but like we're talking 500 years ago, which is extremely recent. And at
Yes.
the time, to your point, the Aztecs consume cacao. So we're gonna talk about what is cacao. So this is the fruit inside. So we have a seed. That seed is this is what chocolate comes from. This is a cacao. Technically, it's a seed. We call it bean, but it's a seed. This is 100% chocolate, right?
Okay.
So this plus sugar equals dark chocolate. And
what's the text exactly? It's very.
It's think about it as it's very crunchy. It's very it's very fibrous. Like it's very crunchy, very crunchy. The best way, it's almost like a crisp almond. Think about an almond is very crunchy,
Yes.
but this is more crisp and less soft. Is the best way I could put it. It's less soft than an almond, and it's crisper than an almond. So, and it's very easy to crush. An almond, you can't crush it within your fingers, but once that's dried and roasted, it's very easy to crush. See, I have a beautiful one without the husk.
Yes.
And you can see because it is a seed, and if I just put a bit of pressure, this would crumble under my finger in a few pieces.
Okay.
And that's what we call cacao nibs. Cacao nibs, what you have on granola and all that. This is where it comes from, right?
Nice.
So originally, this is consumed as a drink. It's crushed drink with spices, and that's kind of it. And so. Cortez tries this, brings it to the court, and they don't like it.
It's too weird.
It's an acquired taste, I guess. But think about it, but this amazing thing happens when this is combined with cane sugar, right? They have colonies. There is like cane sugar, like let's blend it together. And now this is transformed into a paste or a drink by hand. There is no machine, right? At the time, there is no machine to transform this, right? So we have to understand like the significance of this fruit is that you may have heard that cacao beans were used as a currency, right? They were used as a currency. They were a very precious food. It was such a precious food that you had counterfeit, fake cacao beans used as payment, the same way you have fake counterfeit money. You had fake counterfeit cacao beans. This was highly regarded. Okay. So this is just for the context. This was the food of the elite, even among the Aztecs. Then this comes to Europe, it comes to the Spanish court, and it continues to be the food of the elite. What happens is that chocolate starts spreading through the courts and through the royals. But at some point, chocolate is starting what chocolate manufacturing meets industrial revolution. We are in the 1700s, late 1700s. We have the industrial revolution in Europe, in England, and all of a sudden, machines start, the cost of production of things goes a lot lower. Now, that's all well and good, but in order to make chocolate, like to be able to really, the manufacturing cost has gone down with the machines. What we need is more cacao beans. Now, at the time, most of these beans were coming from um, Mesoamerica. We're talking Venezuela and Colombia. There are lots of countries in Latin America that have native cacao. When we're talking Brazil, Venezuela, Colombia, Peru, Mexico, obviously, Guatemala, Belize. Those are all countries that have native cacao. What's happening is what I've learned in this book is that the productivity of those trees aren't going too well. And this amazing thing called colonization happens, and thanks to because of throughout colonization, Europeans were able to bring those trees to places like Sao Tome and Principe, which used to be a Portuguese colony. And what happens there? Is up until the early 1900s, Sao Tome and Principe is like the number one producer of cacao, right? A big driving force for chocolate was the fact that the three main English chocolate companies were Quaker. Cadbury was a Quaker company, Rowntree, and Fry's. Fry is the inventor of the chocolate bar. So the Quaker were really big pushers of chocolate. They were not drinking alcohol, and chocolate was this amazing substitute that did not put that was on the substance, right? So that's what's happening. So when we look at this, we're essentially condensing 500 years, and we're not going into the detail. But yes, originally, there is no machine. It's done by hand, it's consumed with a drink. And, we don't think of Mexico as a dairy country. We don't think of so milk didn't happen until much later, but yes, originally it starts as a drink with no sugar, but with spices.
Yes, and I see that sometimes they added some honey, but that's it, just spices, honey, and sometimes.
Well, no honey at the time, because honeybees are not native to this continent. They are native from Europe. It was Europeans who brought the honeybees. I am only aware of the stingless bee that gives a certain very, very liquid honey, but the honey wouldn't have come until much later, because honey is not native to the American continent. Honeybees are not native to here. They were brought in by Europeans.
Yeah. Thank you. Correct. And I find something very funny. I learned that when Marie Antoinette she married to Louis XVI, she booked a personal chocolate maker.
Yes, she did. You did a really good research.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Yes.
And I love this idea to have this chocolate maker to the queen. It's the name of the... And it's funny because you can understand how it's very important in Europe. The chocolate is very important.
But also, why did she bring it? Because, cacao was thought to have medicinal properties.
Yeah.
And Marie Antoinette, I believe, was 15 years old when she got married, and she was really young. And she had a lot of she drank chocolate because she had to calm her nerves. She was, she was a very nervous person, and it's what I've learned is that apparently it's because she just was she consumed chocolate to calm her nerves. And I understand again that you didn't go to Carrefour or Walmart or whatever to get your chocolate fix. She needed her personal maker. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
And I found too something very funny. It's the recipe of Louis XV for the
Yes.
chocolate. And I was very surprised because first they add chocolate in water and
Mm-hmm.
he add a egg yolk.
Oh.
Yes, and you can find the recipe on the
Oh, that's
Chateau
so
de
cool.
Versailles website. And
Oh, thank you.
I never tried that.
So I do have my friend. So I have a colleague from Projet Chocolat. I always keep a little uh historical timeline. And
Nice.
yes, 1770, Marie Antoinette arrives from Vienna to Versailles, bringing her apotheker. Her chocolate maker creates recipes using flowers from her garden, and the court is introduced to the little round chocolates called pistole.
So
Yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah. So, yeah.
It's so funny too. And I found too, because I do some research for the USA because we are in USA and it's
Mm-hmm.
very interesting to learn about that. And I found that during the American Revolution,
Yes.
to
All
pay
right.
the, to pay the soldiers, they give
Yes.
chocolate.
Yes.
And,
So,
and
yeah.
for the Russian too. And it was the same thing for the World War II.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I never learned that on my history lessons at school.
No. Yes. So what you're talking about is that so some history a few key dates. 1647, the first tavern serving chocolate opened in Oxford, England. And 1700, cacao beans are shipped to the American colonies for manufacturing. So, and it's funny because here in Philadelphia we have the oldest continuously operated candy shop called Shane Confectionery, and they have a lot of archives and do a lot of research. And what they discovered is that in colonial times there was Benjamin Jackson was making mustard and chocolate, and in Philadelphia, and the marketing was, this is not brought from England, this is made here, right? um and another interesting tidbit is that Richard Saunders, which is Benjamin Franklin, he sells chocolate in his print shop, 1775. So if you go to Philadelphia again, you have the the Benjamin Franklin press. And yeah, already, because what happened, Benjamin Franklin was really interested in chocolate as a remedy because he lost one of his young sons to smallpox, and he was convinced that chocolate was able to help with smallpox. So yeah,
Nice.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
so interesting to see that now we can eat so much chocolate, and it was so interesting to learn about the history of that.
yeah. And like you see, the first chocolate bar made in Britain by Joseph Fry and his son in 1847. So
Wow.
when you do the math, it's not been 200 years.
No, it's
It's
very
extremely recent.
yes,
1847. Yeah.
yes, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to see with you
Mm-hmm.
about, maybe we can talk about the sustainability, and maybe before to start about that, see all the certifications that we can find for the chocolate,
Mm-hmm.
and if we can be trust about, because I know that there are fair trade chocolate, organic or non-GMO.
Yes. So, again, we're going to touch on that. If anybody wants to go deeper, I recommend this book to truly understand how we got to this point, and really the nitty gritty. So, why the history of chocolate is important and the history of cacao, it's because it gives us an idea of how people consumed. Meaning that, the cacao was in people's, like, it was in on the land that people occupied, and when we think about other fine foods like wine, for instance, the grapes grow in the vineyard and they're transformed into wine. I make it very simple, but the countries that produce are the same countries that where consumptions happen, right? And of course, things have changed somewhat. But when it comes to chocolate, is that we have to understand that chocolate as we know it is really the product of it's born from the confluence of two things: industrialization, the industrial revolution, and colonization. The Europeans, to fuel their appetite for chocolate, needed places in the tropics to grow the cacao. I mentioned Sao Tome and Principe, but let's talk about some places in Africa where, cacao grows. Ivory Coast was a French colony. It's the number one producer of cacao. Ghana was an English colony, the second producer of cacao. And then another, when we think about the Belgian, it was Congo. Congo was a Belgian colony. And so, what is really colonization? You can learn more about that, but really, the idea of colonization, why did countries colonize others? A big reason was economics, and resources, and extract from a country and bring it back to the mainland, right? And so the way the cacao systems have been set up is that over time, so first there's this colonization aspect, but second, we have to understand that cacao today is traded as a commodity on the commodity market. Oil is a commodity, sugar is a commodity, coffee is a commodity. And what does commodity mean? It means that whatever it is, it's all about volume. Whatever this person produce, like cacao is grown in very small parcels in general. They bring it all together. There are middle people. So all the cacao is traded in New York, on the New York Stock Exchange, and in London. So the price of the cacao is set by that, and there is no incentive for the bulk, what we call bulk or commodity cacao. There is no incentive for any farmer in that system. The people are interchangeable. If something happens to one of these people, it doesn't matter, because to us as consumers, because there's going to be another person who's going to come and have another one, right? So when you think about the system in which, like, I think we cannot talk about fair trade without understanding the system that even brings us here. When you think that what happens when 600 years ago, even more, cacao was considered a noble food for the wealthy, and all of a sudden now all of us have chocolate, and through this system, through like very large factories, through through the commodity market, and through pushing on volume and on quality, we have we're going to go back to the tree. A tree grows 40, on average, it's all average 40 pods. So one pod equals one bar of chocolate, like this. Right? Yes, one bar equals one like this, right? One tree, 40. It takes one tree to grow 40 chocolate bars. Now, you can start understanding, like, this is a lot of land. It's a lot of space. It's a lot for a food that none of us really need to survive, right?
Yes.
So, all right. So that's the system that got us chocolate for everybody. Okay. So why is there fair trade? Why is there organic? Why is it there? Because when, for instance, I live in an area where when I want eggs, I go to the one farm, or I can actually see the delivery person, because there's lots of farmland in where it's half and half. It's like some residential, and then some people have eggs, they have chickens as a hobby, and they sell it to the local grocery. When I go buy my milk, a lot of times it's at a farm called Bailey's Farm, and I see the cows, and I don't need somebody to tell me it's fair trade or organic or whatever. I see it with my eyes. What happened is the history of cacao has been tainted by exploitation for a long time. Early 1900s, Sao Tome and Principe, and the story is really well explained in this French book. What happens is that by then slavery is abolished, because let's not forget about that little, that little, I say that tongue in cheek, but there is this very convenient free labor called slavery that makes things very cheap. When you don't pay your people, it's fantastic in that. And again, I say that being sarcastic, but it brings the prices of many things down, right? Now, what happened is Sao Tome and Principe, it's far. And in the book, there is the story of how there were contracts invented that really were slavery in disguise. And I forget if it was a journalist or what exactly his role was, a British guy.
Yeah.
He goes on to Sao Tome and Principe and start reporting. Those 7-year contract, people do not come back of them because a lot of time they die because their working conditions are so horrible.
It's crazy.
The Cadbury, one of the member of the Cadbury family, like the pressure from the public start mounting, and he goes, this Cadbury, I forget his first name, Cadbury goes, looks at things for himself and decides, this is not Quaker, this is really shady, we have to stop. So all this European manufacturing just stops. Like there's no more Sao Tome and Principe for the cacao. And apparently, what I've learned in this book is, to this day, Sao Tome and Principe is now one of the poorest places in the world because of this immediate pulling of cacao growing. So anyhow, now today, what we hear about issues on cacao farms, whether that's exploitations, there are so many documentaries. You can watch the Rotten Netflix show. You can watch, there is one of the most recent is called The Chocolate War. I think that's what it's called. Yes. This came out last year. There is so much. There is no lack of evidence, right? And so what happens? People discover this and they're like, oh, I don't feel comfortable. None of us are going to do like I do, which is to go to the dairy farm to check on things. None of us have the possibility to check the farm, maybe some exception. So fair trade means you delegate onto a body to create some specs. Fair trade is not regulated like organic. It doesn't. The word organic belongs to the USDA. It belongs to the US government. That's very important. Fair trade is its own organization. Like, it's a fair trade organization. And they decide these are the rules of fair trade. It doesn't need to be voted by, senators or whatever. This is what we decide. And these are some of the rules we decide. And so that we're going to put a label. And it all started with coffee. When public became aware of abuse on coffee farms. We're going to put a label, and the people like you and me are going to feel so much better about our purchases. What I've noticed is that people have no idea what are the requirements of fair trade. And it requires, it's work. You need to actually figure out, what does that mean? What does fair trade mean? So in this book, it's very well explained. A few things of fair trade. Number one, the farmers are responsible for paying the certification. Like that pressure, financial pressure is put on the farmers, right?
Okay.
And so that's like one more burden on them. But also, one of the requirements of fair trade is a guarantee that the price of cacao is not going to go under the floor price set at the floor price dictated by the stock exchange. However, so it sounds great. But then when you actually read the book, you discover that historically, ever since fair trade was in action, the price has never gone down. Like it's a wash. Like the price of the price of commodity has never gone below the floor price of fair trade. Another thing that is absolutely shocking about fair trade is that you have fair trade. Fair trade, even the name implies that by definition, things are unfair. And we are okay with that, right? Okay. So the idea of fair trade means that also, so to have a chocolate, this is not fair trade. And I'm not saying that all of it is bad. I'm just saying, like, let's understand what that really means and why does this exist. So you can have a fair trade label, and it could be that 50% of the cacao beans are fair trade and the other half isn't, because it's called mass balance. And what that does is that it gives the fair trade organization gives the authority to like a processor liquor. This gets a whole other layer, but okay, you can, like, it doesn't necessarily mean that all the beans come from fair trade or get like fair trade thing. It is just there are so many problems. And again, the thing is that when I connected with somebody in Ghana, who is now in France. His name is Benjamin Sitor, and he said to me he wanted to know. He's never been to the U.S. or he's never been to North America. He went to France, and he says, "What I want to know is like, what do people see of of West African cacao?" I said, "I'm going to tell you, a lot of people have no idea how things work or whatever, but I will tell you this: the most educated people will ask me flat out, is this fair trade?" And I have to explain that it's not that simple, and fair trade isn't always trade, it's always fair. And he looked at me and said, "Yeah, they've done a nice job marketing, haven't they?" And I say, "Yes." And so again, this isn't for the consumer. Fair trade matters, and they are very good organization that will seek that certification. What I can think of is there is a cooperative, and also, yes, usually it's cooperatives will get fair trade certified because it's expensive for one farmer. So they will say they will get an organic certification, a fair trade certification, because they are big. There is one, I have it here. I have it in my bag, but it's like the Norandino cooperative in Peru. That's a solid cooperative. They have the certification because it is a selling point. And people that I know have seen the cooperative speak very highly about the cooperative. Another thing, for those of you who are socially conscious, like what I actually did is that if you give money or like you lend money to make microloans, like to Kiva, what I love saying is Norandino. Like I always try to give to to lend money to Norandino farmers because I know their reputation. I try to give it to women farmers. I know the impact on the communities, but it requires so much knowledge. And what we as consumer are looking for is this, shortcut to, I want to feel good about my choices. And, and what's the very big question that we're skipping when we say, I want to feel good about my choices, like, what is a good choice and who gets to decide and what is it I'm missing? And the thing about something like, cacao, coffee, or the sugar, things that come from places that are not, I can give you so many. I literally know my egg farmer, my beef farmer, my, I know these people where I live. I mean, it's not the case for everybody, but it's not that hard. You can go in New York City, you have the farmer's market and you meet your farmer. It's very simple. They can take you home with you. For cacao and chocolate, is the systems that were in place to bring those food were built on unfair and unjust practices, and it's very uncomfortable for us to put our nose into that.
Exactly. And I learned too that sometimes they use kids. You speak about slaveries, and I read that sometimes they use kids to make chocolate, and like you say, it's when you buy something, it's like when you vote, you ask to have something that we don't hurt other people. You just want to have a pleasure to eat something. That's it.
Yeah.
But I think now it's very difficult to, and it's why I'm so happy to have you, because it's difficult when you start, you feeling comfortable with the certification. And after, when you read more, you say, oh, maybe it's not the best one. But often I say that it's important, like you say, to buy local. And often I think that a lot of co-op in all the world are better than certification. It's often like that. I think it's the same for the products that we sell on closest place, for the Palo Santo and other things.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
And that's the thing is, it's like, the argument is that, when I got into chocolate, I was like, why is this so expensive? And over the course of 5 months, I said, why is that so cheap? Like, I will tell you, like, everybody I know who makes chocolate is like, it is so hard. It is so hard because, you know, I say it very simply, but, and this isn't to belittle anybody's work, but like, if you want to roast coffee, you need to develop the skill as a coffee roaster. That's a skill. It's not easy, right?
Yes.
But once it's roasted, the job is done. As a craftsperson, the job is done. This um this is fermented and dried at the country of origin. If it's a good quality, like we're talking not commodity, fermentation, so good genetics, fermentation, drying. This lasts 2 weeks, then ship to wherever in the world they're going to transform this into chocolate. Let's say it's Pennsylvania or France or whatever. Then it's a process that, you remove the shell. You have to then, we know, separate the shell from the inside, the bean, the nib. The nib then gets ground with sugar. That's a 2-day process. The machines, in Europe, we like our chocolate that is very fine and smooth. Those machines are $1 million machines. Like, we are talking, like, it's a manufacturing process. And what
Yes.
you're trying to do is decrease the particle size. And some people are very talented. They can work with very small machines that are inexpensive, but that's not the majority. And the fact of the matter is, our taste buds were shaped by the machinery that very large companies use, right? And so, because smooth and creamy, we love it. Of course we do, and and so it's expensive. And then after that, it has to be a lot of times it's aged. Like, I'm gonna go to a chocolate factory, chocolate workshop or whatever on Monday. They age their chocolate for 1 month. A lot of, like, the specialty chocolate will age their chocolate like that. Once coffee, for instance, once coffee is roasted,
Yes.
it doesn't need to age. That's it. You can sell it. Like, it's it's more simple. And there are coffee businesses that also do chocolate. And I will tell you, from an economic point of view, companies will sell something like that for $10 and say, I barely make money. They will say that to you. And it's really difficult because our we live with the consequences that of the choices that our ancestor made, for better or for worse. And when all of us grew up with chocolate produced in very large factories, we are used to a certain price point. We are used to a certain, quality or whatever. And the moment the chocolate comes from a smaller operation, they're like, why is this $10? And the person making it would like, this, I'm not even making money. It's like, I have the cafe and that's how I pay the bills. I roast coffee. That's how I pay the bills. Like, there is something else to support the chocolate. Or I sell ice cream and that's how I pay the bills. It's like chocolate. I've said that many times, and I understand it can be shocking to say what I'm going to say, but I think a chocolate bar should be $25. It should really be, now you can get excellent quality chocolate for $12. For 12,
Yeah.
like my most expensive chocolate, which is like, oh my gosh, this is like, where did you find this? I'm doing a tasting with that bar this afternoon. The most expensive bar I carry in the 37 chocolates inventory is $18. And when you think about how expensive whiskey can get, wine can get, a fine meal restaurant can get, it's like, it's not that expensive. And the chocolate maker who makes that says, I don't even make money with it. It breaks even.
Seriously?
Yeah, $18. He says, I make this to like, he has different, revenue stream. Like, he says, he makes bonbons, he makes bars, he makes, all kinds of products. And I know he told me, this is what pays the bills. This product right here is what pays the bills. This, I barely break even. And that's an $18 bar. He says, yes, it supports this. It's the top of the crop, but it's very, it's funny because I keep saying, like, you can appreciate fine things and understanding that it's not going to be an everyday thing. And this is where my job is. My job is, it's like, you know, I taste a lot of chocolate. I build a relationship with the makers. And, I have made a conscious decision to be a one person operation. And I could find ways to grow in, whatever. And it's like, for many reasons, I stay the way I am, but it's like, I can add one new company per year to my inventory. No more than that. I need to make sure the quality is consistent. I need to know I know them. I need to know they're great to work with, that they, things like, so many things have to be checked. People need to like it. My customers have to like it. When I do a tasting, I pay attention. I see it on my screen. I do the tastings on Zoom. And it's like, I need to make sure that it's the ethics end. Ethics is a given. It has to be everything else. And what is also very difficult, we talk about sustainability. There is that environmental sustainability.
Yes.
We can talk about, the impact of global warming, and like that's
Yes, I would like to talk about it. Yes.
yes. So, but yes, to go back to that. So these are things that we talk when we talk about sustainability, and we can talk about environmental sustainability
Yes.
now. It's that there are different aspects to sustainability. Something can be environmentally sustainable and not financially sustainable. Those are two different things, and they have to go hand in hand. It's not enough for something. It's not enough that there was no slaves or children or whatever in your supply chain. That's the bare minimum. It shouldn't, right? Like,
Yes.
like, okay, so that's the bare minimum. But that doesn't stop there. Like, this is just the beginning. And sometimes what I see is that companies that completely collapse after, because what they needed to do was start a nonprofit instead of running a business, right? So, but like the challenges, there are many challenges, and this is where, for me, places like LinkedIn are very valuable, because that's where I can connect with people and have deeper conversations with people who live on a farm, are farmers, live in Colombia, live in Ghana, and that's where I can engage with some of the more nuanced conversations.
Yes.
So there are a few. What are some of the challenges? And I'm going to make it very simplistic. We talk about a big problem, and that's what people talk about in the when you go to a chocolate festival or whatever. So what this book, that's my search for this. What I've learned is 80% of Ivory Coast is deforested because of cacao. 80%, right? And the problem is that this is a number, and where I would really want people to really look at, like, to not say the solution is one sentence. This is a piece of data for you. And send messages to the big companies that use that, and hold them accountable. Say, I expect you to do something about this.
Yeah.
That's already a first start. Does that mean that chocolate should be over and dead as we know it? I don't think so. And for me, what it always comes down to, it's like, to the people and the stories and what you see. In Ghana, and this is what I've learned from Benjamin Sitor that I mentioned, is that he actually was a field research assistant in Ghana with a professor, with the author of this book. That's how I met him. And he said he met the people. And then all of a sudden, what's really missing is truly the humanization of things. And, for people who who own their stories, instead of somebody, a third party or journalist necessarily owning that story. What he said is this. He said, there are people who became landowners because of cacao, because it's a path to wealth. What he said is, he showed me a photo of these two sisters, one of them much older than the other, who was able to send her sister to school because of cacao. And so this really puts a lot of things back in perspective. It's like we have to understand that they are human beings that are involved in this. And the answer isn't this should be over, this should stop, this like no, 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 no. And the first thing is to accept that we're going to be uncomfortable in those discussions and we're not going to come to conclusions. And why do I take my time vetting chocolate makers or understanding or like, working with them? Is that ultimately for me, what I hold on to is that in 2019, I did go to Colombia and I met three groups of farmers. I met indigenous people, the Arhuacos, 2019. And what I discovered is they have native cacao on their ancestral land. They
Wow.
own the land. They have, they have cacao that is a legacy. And it's good for the biodiversity. It's their legacy for human cacao. A lot, at least in those environments where I went in Colombia, grows in agroforestry environment, right? And so, I saw this. I saw the Arhuacos and I said, well, the answer isn't that simple. One path for more sustainability environmentally, like go back to environment. Then I saw another gentleman who, showed us, to, his farm. And this is what I saw. I was on his farm, the cacao, and across the road, I saw a baby palm plantation. It's a complete monocrop. Cacao is not a monocrop. The reason that the Arhuacos, for instance, what I've learned is that the cacao for them is they say the cacao gives back to the soil. The cacao is good for the soil because soil is the essence of farming, right? Any farmer that will tell you, the farmers who are really into sustainability say it goes down to the soil and the soil. They say it's good for the soil. Because what do we have in Colombia also? What's the alternative crop? Coca. It's a drug. It's illicit. And what I have learned from talking to people in Peru is that the alternative of cacao is growing illicit substances, meaning there is no bank account, meaning you don't pay taxes, meaning because you don't pay taxes, there is no investment in your infrastructure. I know somebody who said to me, these are stories that fill my head that make them stop me from making shortcuts. This was a gentleman, he's from Seattle. He married a Peruvian lady and he works in it's called Ucayali River Cacao. And he works with the other gentleman and there is money coming from USAID, so from US government. And this is why one day I'll always remember we met at a festival and he said to me, the narrative about cacao, like bad slavery, people need to understand this. He looks at me straight in the eyes. He said, do you know what it's like to have a gun pointed at your head? And I said, no. And I said, do you? He said, yes, twice. Why? Because, he grows cacao. Cacao is legal. You have a bank account. The money goes to the bank. There is no cash laying around in the bank. When you grow coca, in addition to being illicit substance, it's also terrible for the environment. Like it depletes the soil, right? And so, but let's go back to the what's the lifestyle of people like that? The lifestyle is, I don't have a bank account. When the harvest happens, the criminals know how. What I mean is that they know where that there's going to be an influx of money at the harvest time where the farmers are going to be paid. They don't have a bank account. They cannot. They have cash laying around. And what he said to me, his name is Robin. Robin said to me, what happens is that they would take a child and say, you don't give us the money, this kid goes down. And so when we are trying to craft a single narrative on like good, bad, sustainable, everything is highly contextual, contextual. And we have to understand what is this competing with. And the situation in Peru or Colombia is not the same as the situation in like Ghana or Ivory Coast for that matter. And so the challenging environmentally, so I'll tell you what I have learned and what I've seen is that cacao is a better crop to grow than palm. I've seen because it cannot grow as a monocrop, right? Or it can, but that's whatever.
Yes.
So that is one aspect. One thing about global warming, what I have seen in Colombia is coffee is being affected. Though I want to say there is an initiative called MOCA, and I'm trying to. So that is that gets funded from the U.S. government. It's meant for maximizing. I can put a thing in the chat. So that's one way that you learn more about. All right, where are we? Okay,
You can send
so
me after, and I can add on the YouTube
okay.
channel.
Okay, great. So there is and I can say to you all, MOCCA. So and it stands for maximizing opportunity for cacao and coffee agriculture or something like that. And
Yes.
this is a program that helps. Okay, MOCA will support the market system actors in Central America and Peru by collaborating and building capacity of others to train farmers, etc., etc. But it's really in the context of global warming.
Yes.
Yes. So that conversation, I'll tell you, the money is going there. The money is supporting. So
Yes.
it's mocca.org, and that's already a place to start. Because there is nobody that's gonna have. No one person has a one answer. If they do, they are lying. Like that, you should not listen. All I have is story that ground me in remembering that it's not simple. I see that Melissa has a message about it depends on this crop about the deforestation. I don't personally know. For me, I like I know if you I do a lot of research where like what does Nestle say and whatever. I mean it's corporations, okay? There you can take it with a grain of salt. I know more and more consumers are aware of it, and I will tell you, I cannot if there is one thing you can do today is hold the big companies because they are the ones who have the most responsibility and the most power.
Yes.
And you know the chocolate I carry for my tasting, it's 1% if that of the market. It's like it's the equivalent of a fine bottle of wine. What I was showing you, these are this is single estate chocolate, Hacienda Victoria in Ecuador. I have YouTube videos. It's like I call it the Chanel of cacao. So this is because I want to create certain experiences and I want people to understand like, oh, I have 1 hour for them to like go, aha, I had no idea chocolate could taste like this. This is absolutely fantastic and whatever. But the reality is, not everybody is interested in this or is going to like it and the chocolate, the big companies have such power to make change. And if you look at history, it's always comes down to pressure. Why is there even like I go to Nestle's website, to Hershey website regularly in time, and I want to see what's their messaging. What do they communicate? When I got into chocolate, you had their statement, if I remember correctly, unless I didn't look on the website too well, their statement was, we don't know, there's no child slaves. Oh, that was their statement 8 years ago. And it's like, now 5 years ago, apparently they started their own program and you have numbers. Now, you have to read through the numbers and it's like, like some of the things I read is like, knowing what I know, it's like, yeah, this is nice. Hershey says this, for instance, their cacao program is we teach our farmers to grow their yield and make more money. And it's like, that sounds good on paper, but what that does is cacao is a commodity. If everybody produces more, the price is going to go down. Like this is supply and demand. So it's like things like that looks good on paper when you don't, you're not in that industry, but it comes down from us. It comes down from saying, what you do about it? What are you going to do? Nestle now says, oh, now we're building schools, and it's like too little too late, but okay. It comes from us, and I cannot stress that enough. If somebody like Melissa is like asking about deforestation, well, Where is it coming from? It's from our demand of this cheap chocolate that comes from the big companies that, they have money to go around. They can start the program and start holding them accountable. That's the way I can put it. And we have to understand that everything is case by case. Everything is like there is a big system, but we cannot paint everything with the one big stroke.
And
Yeah.
I have a question, because often when I was very surprised when I came in USA to test sometimes something white chocolate, and I didn't find the taste of chocolate on some product here. And do you know if there's a legislation about that, some
Yes.
bill? Because sometimes I think that it's just a color. It looks like.
So I'm having a hard time finding exactly the piece of regulation I found
Yes.
last time I did it. But this is all regulated, I won't say by the FDA. And
Yeah.
on the FDA, the chocolate definition, the last I saw, required 10% to be labeled chocolate. 10% of this. So when you said it's the chocolate taste, that's why, is that the bar for chocolate is so low. That's last I checked. I have to say I'm having a harder time finding that piece of regulation the way I did. I'll tell you, white chocolate is very heavily regulated as well.
Yes.
Usually, and they would tell you can see on the FDA's website, usually regulation or like these bodies of these laws happen because a group, somebody like white chocolate, that legislation happens specifically because it's the candy manufacturers of America, led by Hershey, pushed for this legislation. Like there are things like that. And so all of this is like accessible on the FDA if you want to look it up, but it has to do with that. Yeah, I mean, it starts with how little can you get away with.
Okay, it's very interesting. It's on just 10% of chocolate.
That's last I checked. I have
Yes.
to say I'm having such a hard time finding this piece of
No.
legislation again. But yeah, that's why Hershey Kiss is 11%. That's what I've always found out. So it's and I mean, I know things, and but also there's something else, Julie, because we have to understand that every market is different,
Yes.
and in France, like a lot of people love talking about Belgium and Switzerland. It's funny because in France, people like their chocolate very dark.
Okay. Yeah.
In a way that in Belgium and Switzerland, not necessarily. Switzerland might be more milk chocolate and
Yeah.
filled chocolate in Belgium, but in France specifically, people really like it dark.
Yes.
They like their 70% in a way that it's not necessarily the mainstream. Here. So I saw
Yes.
the UPS truck and I'm like, oh my gosh, did I order some chocolate? I don't know if it's for me, but anyway.
And I don't know if you have something to add, but maybe we can say that it's like it's the same thing, I think, for a lot of other stuff in sustainability. It's very hard to have something very sustainable and to be sure.
Yeah.
Like you said, we need to talk with the people, learn more, and sometimes go see just by our eyes. And I think maybe we can say that it's better to buy chocolate from co-op and small business, and sometimes maybe it's less chocolate to buy chocolate cheap.
Mm-hmm. Julie, what if there was one thing I would push, so to speak, like if my agenda, like it sounds like, we have to go back to how was chocolate sold to us when we were growing up. It's usually it was a woman eating chocolate on her by her own, her indulgence, whatever. And a lot of times we think of chocolate, this is the analogy, we have thought about chocolate as fast food, something you eat alone, something you eat when you're stressed, something that is going to fix your problem, is going to numb you on the spot, right? And oftentimes when we eat, fast food in our car, it's not because we hang out with our best friend, right? It's because we're in a rush to go somewhere. We need something to get us going. But if we are given a choice, I guess I should have asked that. If you're given a choice, do you want to eat fast food alone in your car? Or like rather, Do you want to eat a high-end restaurant meal alone in your car, or do you want it to eat it with people you love in a restaurant or in a beautiful table in your house? Which
Yeah.
one would you pick? Should I even ask the question? So what I want, a lot of, we talk about mindfulness and meditation or whatever. What my suggestion is this: start tasting chocolate with your friends. Start making a, you know, ritual is could be a word. Like I don't eat as much chocolate on my own as people think, because I find that the joy is not as much there.
Yeah.
And so what I really love doing is I go across the street to my neighbors and I say, look, I have some leftover wine because I'm preparing for a wine and chocolate pairing. And I think you're going to like it with this. And I don't want to do it alone. I want to do it with other people. And when
Yes.
you do it with your other people, you slow down just because you talk to them, right?
Yes. It's
and
true.
and then you actually pay attention, and you need to pay attention because you're going to talk about it. And
Yes.
so if you it starts, I think, reimagining, how do I consume this? And for me, the reason I don't consume as much as it's because I changed the way I consume it, and I got so much more joy and pleasure from doing it with people. Whether that's why I host tastings, because when I host tastings, you know I do it for the people and I get so much more. Or I do it, with my neighbors, as I said, and it's like I can't eat this alone, but I'm gonna feel, yeah, it's chocolate. What can I tell you? And you're not here to try it. I wish you were there. You were here. And
Yes.
that's what I think that's gonna be a key part of a big thing, a key to like changing the way we need to start changing the way we consume, how we consume. And I
Yeah.
think that's like already a first step.
It's very interesting because it's what I said often. We need to change our habits,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the same for chocolate.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's going back to like whether you mend your clothes or whatever. If your
Yes.
friend is doing it, you're gonna do it, because
Yes.
it changes the social norm, right?
Yes.
So yeah.
Thank you so much, Estelle. I don't know if you want to add something, but it's. I hope to have another one with you.
Oh yeah. I mean, thank you so much, because these are some of the, when I host a tasting with, chocolate is so, the word of chocolate. When you host chocolate tastings, um I forget what was gonna say, because I saw Melissa leaving a message.
I
um
would like, Melissa, it's a good
so
question. I would like
I
that
do
Estelle
have,
come.
so I do my tastings on Zoom mostly, and I really don't go. I try very hard to not go beyond half an hour radius around my house, and I encourage people to do Zoom, because I think it's like, I want very local or on Zoom. So, and on Zoom I'm going to have a tasting coming up on May 7th about the theme being, it's not up yet, not your mother's chocolate. And I'm gonna present different bars and say, why is this not your mother's? What is your mother's chocolate, and why is not the same? Go back to some advertisement from back in the day. So I do them on Zoom. If you want somebody in, so for I always say, if you're not with the chocolate you love, you need to love the chocolate you're with. Will I go to New York, for tasting? Well, unless you pay a lot of money, I'm not going to do it. However, what I'm very pleased to do is I have a network of colleagues. And for Melissa and anybody in New York, I encourage you to go to the Coco store in New York City, which is, I forget which floor of it's very close to the Flatiron building, from what I understand. So it's Coco store. I think their website is like Coco Store NYC or something like that. And my friend and colleague Geneviève Leloup, she's half Belgian, half Swiss. She lives in Brooklyn, and Geneviève works there part time. I always say she sounds like me, doesn't look like me. She has frizzy hair, but she sounds like me. She has the same accent. Say, go talk to Geneviève. The owner is named Pepe, but yes, talk to Geneviève. And they have regular tasting in New York City. And Melissa, as much as I would love to have your business, do it on Zoom with me, But if you want an in-person experience, I will refer you to New York City to one of my colleagues. So that's the best. Coco Store New York, Melissa and Julie.
And if you can send to me some links like that, I can add on the
okay
beyond the video on YouTube, like that people can contact you and maybe make some degustation too.
Yeah. My website is 37, the number 37 chocolates plural.com. And you can, I always say, sign up to the newsletter. That's where I send, my theme. I will do Zoom tastings for the foreseeable future with different themes. I'm going to have at least one before the summer. Then I take a break off for the summer. We're talking about sustainability. I want people to plan because there's summer.
Yes.
If I can avoid sending chocolate in the summer, I would do that. And then when temperatures start cooling down again, then, I'll have a tea and chocolate tasting and, like things that are little more fun you can do at home.
And do you have an advice for people who want to buy something for example, Easter or for Mother's Day or that day?
What I would suggest is that, all right. I have a e-shop. Also, I have a highly curated shop called 37. So you go to 37chocolates.com and you click on shop. I had 11 packages of Easter eggs made in Quebec with hazelnut. Like everything is traceable. Like very wonderful company up there. And what I'm waiting for, and that's why I'm wondering if UPS brought that up. What I will have is actually filled, and it has a product called Jaguar, which is a cacao relative. So Mother's Day. Okay, so I'm gonna have this chocolate, like hazelnut Jaguar filled animals that I'm gonna put on the shop. Also, I have a very nice selection. I have raspberry. I don't know if I have it. Raspberry rose chocolate on my website. I have a white chocolate with lemon and lemon sea salt as well. I have what do I have? I have a bar from this company, Mocha. I still have a few. I have a bar that it's Uganda chocolate. I think it's Uganda, and on this other side there is a strawberry heart chocolate. And when you break the chocolate, there is 1 heart per square. So these are things that it's all on my e-shop. Yeah.
Okay, I will share the link for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, all of you, and to you, Estelle.
Thank you, Julie. This was great.
Yes, I hope to see you soon.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to share about chocolate.
Anytime, Estelle.
Merci beaucoup, Julie.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.